All right, so today we're going to talk about, we're still talking about substitution. We're just going to kind of build off of a little bit here. It's the same process, it's the same idea. I just want to talk about when we would get no solution in IMS, or infinitely many, just like when we were graphing and we would have no solution when our lines don't intersect, and we would have IMS when our lines were on top of one another and the lines were the same and they intersected infinitely many times. So what does that look like with substitution? What kind of answers are we going to get? What is our work going to look like? That's kind of what we're going to talk about today and walk through. So the steps are the same. The process is the same. It's just a little bit different of equations and a different result and answer. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So example 1. We know the answer is going to be no solution, but we're going to go through and solve it with the same steps, just like we normally would, but the result's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to look for an isolated variable and circle what it equals. So I want to look for a variable that's by itself and circle the other half. So my x is not by itself, my y is not by itself, this x is not by itself, but this y is by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and circle the other side. Okay, and I'm going to draw my arrow. And it equals y, so I'm going to substitute it into the other equation for y. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and substitute into the first equation. So in the first equation, we're going to get, so I'm going to rewrite it, but instead of y, I'm writing my negative 4x plus 5. So 4x plus y, which is now negative 4x plus 5 equals 12. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and solve, just like we did before, right? So number 2, substitute in what you circled. Number 3, solve for the variable. So the only variable that's left is x, and we're going to go ahead and solve for x. So I want to combine like terms and then solve. Well, 4x plus negative 4x gives me 0x, meaning these actually cancel out. And I'm going to be left with an equation of 5 equals 12. Does 5 equal 12? No, never will, never ever. Because this equation is not true, it's false, that's going to tell me that my answer is no solution. Okay, so again, our variable canceled out. So our variable canceled out and we were left with no variables. Guys, when it cancels out like this, I don't want you to write 0x here. And what do I mean by that? 4x plus negative 4x gives me 0x. A lot of times when you go to write 0x, you're going to write 0x plus 5 equals 12. And you're going to subtract 5 on both sides. Right? I'm going to kind of show you what it looks like over here. 0x plus 5 equals 12. Minus 5. Minus 5. We get 0x equals 7. Oh, okay, I need to get x by itself. I'm going to divide by 0, divide by 0. Oh, x equals 0. Guys, no. Don't do this. Don't do this at all. Why? Don't even go through the process of writing 0x. It cancels itself out, so there's nothing there, right? I don't want you to make this mistake because, guys, type this into your calculator. What is 7 divided by 0? Nothing. It doesn't work. It doesn't exist. That's not possible. You can't divide anything by 0, okay? So don't do this. Don't do that. Okay? Don't even write the 0x. Okay? Just cross it out. Don't go writing 0x. Just cross it out and leave the rest of your equation there so you get 5 equals 12, which is not true. Okay? We're going to follow the same process for the second example. The only difference is this time we're going to get IMS, and I want to show you, again, what that looks like. But we're following the same steps from above. So we want to look around, look at our 2 equations, and see if we have a variable that's by itself. Well, this x is not by itself, the y is not by itself, this x is not by itself, and technically this y is not either. The y is negative, so it's not by itself. So it's the closest thing to being by itself, but it's not actually by itself. So what we have to do is get this y by itself first. So I'm going to rewrite this equation. All right, so I'm going to rewrite negative 2x plus 5 equals negative y. Now, guys, I want to get that y by itself. So how do I get this y by itself? How do I get rid of that negative? I'm going to divide by negative 1. So that means I divide this entire side by negative 1. My negatives are going to cancel, right? I'm going to get negative 2x divided by negative 1 gives me positive 2x. Positive 5 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 5 equals negative y divided by negative 1. Again, that cancels, so I'm left with y. Okay? Now I have a variable that's by itself. So now I can circle the other half and draw my line to where I'm substituting it in. Now remember, we worked with the second equation. So I want to take this and plug it into the first equation. So I'm going to go ahead, draw my arrow. It's going up there. All right, so let's rewrite the first equation. Negative 2x plus y, but instead of y, it's going to be 2x minus 5 equals negative 5. Okay? So now we're going to simplify, just as if we were solving it regularly, right? We're going to simplify. We want to solve for the variable. So we have negative 2x plus 2x minus 5 equals negative 5. So negative 2x plus 2x. That's going to cancel out. Again, I don't want you to, same thing as above, right? I don't want you to go down this rabbit hole of having 0x, right? It cancels out, so cross it out and leave it alone. We're left with negative 5 equals negative 5. Is that true? Are they equal? Sure thing. So because they are equal and because they are the same and this equation is true, our answer is IMS. Okay? So what happens when a variable cancels out? You're going to get one of two answers. No solution or infinitely many solutions. And the biggest difference is that with no solution, the equation's not true. 5 does not equal 12. Right? But with IMS, the equation is true. Negative 5 equals negative 5. That is true. All right? So that's the difference between no solution and IMS. And I also kind of snuck in there what happens when a variable is not fully by itself. We have to find a way to get a variable by itself so that way we use substitution. So that way we can circle and substitute it into the other equation.